So we've defined nation, sort of, and we know whether hot dogs are sandwiches. Maybe. So the ladies of the Mosaic Ark considered that maybe we're up to asking the big one. What is a woman? You've got two of them here tonight to explain it on the Mosaic Ark. Okay. So my finger slipped and we're looking at pictures already. Sorry. This is where we were last week, thinking about marriage and what these kinds of pairings have to do with each other. We figured are we ready? Are we ready to do the big question? The category that nobody seems to be able to, if you can be a Supreme Court judge and not be able to answer the next question. We'll go ahead and do it, right? Okay, so women, here we are. What is a woman? Is this the same kind of category question as we've been having with the other ones, like nation and hot dogs? Should we go back to the hot dogs to remind? No.
So lots of people have spent a lot of time explaining to the world that, oh, yes, you can't possibly know. This is a totally valid question. It needs to be discussed. And actually, no, it doesn't need to be discussed. It just needs to be accepted that it's anything you want it to be.
Which, the woman or the
woman or the hot dog?
The hot dog. I don't know. I mean, we got a lot of mileage out of the food. I think it's like with the guys. Rogue Wave, thank you for the sound check. The gremlins are out, and we're about to talk about the huge. No, well, it's funny that this is the question, right? It's like this is the one that we're fighting over most. When okay, nation is enormous. Hot dogs, all right. Food stuff is important. I mean, there are other kinds of categories that this is a subset to, like human, right? That we seem to be wrestling with. But maybe, we've danced around not dealing with this for a while. So let's deal with it. So we asked Grok.
Our new expert. Yes.
Okay. So yes, we could start with, how much time are you spending playing with your favorite AI? LLM large language model search engine. and how much do you trust its answers, right? Can Grok tell us whether we're women? Well, we don't know. Okay,
it couldn't tell me what religion I was, which is hilarious.
Oh yeah. Okay, so maybe we should admit our other test. We've been showing Grok our poetry and have established on the basis of highly rigorous technical tests that Grok is decent at reading comprehension. This is actually
pretty decent.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like we feed it at our sonnets that we've been practicing, and it seems to get the jokes, which is, I guess, reassuring.
It's funny. Yeah, it understands when you're using humor, but it doesn't know how to replicate it. That's really interesting.
Yeah. And we had so the sonnet we were playing with tonight. These we'll share with you in the newsletter tomorrow, because we got, I think.
Yeah, they were fun.
Did we get them all rewritten? I think we were doing a test on the Trumpy executive orders of No, I think there's one left. I think we still have one more. We did
Oh,
two.
do
Yeah,
we?
we did. We had three. Um,
Oh, I thought we were going to share the. I thought we were going to share the AI question ones with them. Those ones were good.
well, we could do that. So that Grok wanted to start
Yeah,
rewriting our poem with us, right? And so it's like explained that it was a sonnet and it needed to have a turn, and so it started playing with the turn and such. And it knew like mood. It could say, this one's more gloomy or this one's more
yeah.
celebratory. And it could, catch the rhymes and mostly scan, and yet it still didn't quite make sense. These poems, but the thing is,
Well, was that our fault?
no, because it understood when we put, it's like with the first poem we put in, the first sonnet we put in, it got what we were trying to say. So this is the stress test on whether or not it can answer the question, what is a woman?
Oh,
Right? Because can it
right.
parse out in all of the conversation that it finds out there in the
I
internet?
want to point out in advance because I saw in advance what Grok answer Grok gave you. That this is potentially the brain that's going to be going into androids in the future. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, fair, right? And this is like the sort of what is human. We do have some selections on that one. So after we do the what is woman, maybe we should have started with what is human to determine whether or not our test of what is woman is going to come out of what is human. Um, it seems to be decent at summarizing texts, right? Which I'm and
Oh yeah,
yeah.
more than that, more than decent. Yeah, it was pretty good,
Um,
frighteningly so.
well, I mean, so you said this is going to be the brain that's in the androids that people are talking to. I mean, the sort of illusion that people are giving themselves
Right.
of these robots being judges is a little terrifying, right? It's like you start asking questions of them, and they give you, because they're trained to write in human style, right? I actually I didn't we do plan, and then we don't plan where we're gonna go because it is actually live streamed and we're actually like mulling and meditating here.
Yeah.
And
It's so I've only read about 4 or 5 because you were having a lot of fun with it, and I read the ones that the answers that Grok gave that you fed into it. But it definitely has its own voice. It has a very particular voice.
well,
Um,
we did test it. I
and
did test it back at Christmas, making it try to write the nativity story in different modes.
oh
You
right, I
remember
do
that?
remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And but it
yeah.
could it
But
sort of did. I mean, it would get
but
like
I meant
a
by
phrase or a vocabulary word or something, but it's not actually that stylistically flexible.
no, I'm talking about the answers it gave you to direct questions, not the poetry it was trying to write or rewrite.
Right. It has
So
its
when it
own
answered,
style. It as
yeah,
a
it
verbal
definitely has.
style. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It has a recognizable voice. So if any students were thinking of passing that over on a decent teacher they have, they wrote it themselves, that a good teacher would probably be able to pick up on that really quickly if they were paying attention. It's because it has its own, definitely has its own voice.
Now I'm wondering, I should have asked, can you answer this as a woman? Well, how much we should have
That's
stylistically
potentially funny.
tested the robot, because
Now I'm going to
no, I
though.
know everybody out there. It's like you guys can help us.
That's a good
Yes,
idea.
it's like run these tests and see. Okay, well, it's mainly Rogue Wave in the audience right now, and there's at least one other person. We got an audience, a select and thoughtful audience right now. Um, that I mean, what's funny about this, and the meta level on this, I think, is right for our problem. We are being told constantly that our personal perspective is what determines whether or not we belong in a certain social category or not. Like your lived experience is the thing that determines what other people should accept you as socially.
You know what's strange that you just mentioned that phrase, your lived experience, and I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
It's like, what other kind of experience is there? Are there people trying to pass off other people's experiences as their own?
Well, I think it's one of those garbage terms that just, it's like, it's a tautology, as you're saying, right? It's my lived experience as opposed to my dead experience, as opposed to my
as opposed to your AI
as opposed to
experience,
my
right?
AI experience.
As opposed
Yeah.
to your Android experience. I'm not alive. I'm an Android,
Right.
right?
What's the
Eventually,
androids?
we will
What's
hear
the
this.
androids experience and how and it I okay, so yeah, so I think what they mean by lived experience is it's something that I myself have experienced, which makes it a tautology, as opposed to things that I have picked up from other people talking
But
about
usually you would
their
just say my experience in my
in my
experience.
experience, right? So the lived experience. Yes, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's how that got into our lexicon. I could probably ask the robots. Um, uh, and
And they did it.
the robots did it.
Yeah, they did it.
Okay, so I
Yeah,
do
they
actually.
invented.
We can.
I don't know.
Okay, we're going to talk about AI first, right? That what we are doing.
It's appropriate.
Yes, because we want to know what's a woman, and we asked it. The AI robots, which are the large language model search engines, are being fed lots of data. So they're actually data bots, right? No, I had a better way. I had a better version of saying what they are. They're the what was I who was I talking to about this? I was talking to you about it, right? I was also saying I had dinner last night for some from colleagues, and of course everyone's talking about the AI because everyone's nervous about it, and we're of course nervous that it's going to take our jobs because it's being trained to do certain things. But the interesting thing is, of course, the reason we have these big search engines now is we've been feeding them data for decades,
Hmm.
and we have been using them in the way in which I've been using Grok. I mean, pretty much my entire career because, you start with, let's see, I want to know something, right? Okay, where
Hmm.
would you go? Where would you go in the data structures for that back in 1982, for example? Well, you'd go to the
Oh,
library.
the reference desk of the library.
Right.
Yeah, they had one.
Right, so you'd have the librarian, you might ask, right? And you'd have, a series of books that other human beings had compiled that then you would use as your reference for information, right? And you had
Hmm.
or you could go. I mean, you said reference desk. I was thinking just card catalog, right? You'd look stuff up, right? But there would be the problem with using a card catalog is it had to be indexed in a particular way for you to find the stuff you were looking for, whether you index it by
Hmm.
author and title or subject index, and all of those subject indexes. Guys, they didn't like magically blip into existence. People have been working on them for centuries, starting, for example, in the 12th or 13th centuries, when you
Right.
subject index, for example, the scriptures. I mean, that's obviously one of the things that the guys in Paris started doing a lot in the 12th and 13th centuries is making subject indexes for the scriptures. It turns into, we were listening to the Neil Stevenson Baroque cycle, and at one point Leibniz is talking about the problem. I think it's Leibniz. We'll just pretend it's Leibniz. He was a librarian at some point, and he's talking about the problem of creating an index. It's a huge question. I mean, so
Hmm.
much so that, for example, one of the great products of the 18th century, the Enlightenment, is, at least in France, the encyclopédie. It's the encyclopedia that Diderot and his friends make, and they're really proud of themselves for making cross references. So maybe you're
Hmm.
looking up a particular article, say whichever one, the one Rousseau wrote, Political Theory. I don't think he wrote that one, but anyway. So someone writes political theory, and then they put in the cross references to send you in other places for information. Now, does this sound reassuring or terrifying?
Does it sound reassuring or terrifying that they invented
Hmm.
indexing? Well, I'm kind of a freak and information junkie, so it's not terrifying to me. Not sure, not sure
You
what you're getting
you're
at.
one of them, aren't you?
I am.
Okay, so consider some
I mean, I'm like, cool, a network.
cool a network. Consider what some of the things that people are saying that they're frightened that the AI is or isn't going to be able to do. I mean, we should stop calling it AI. We should just call it data engines, or I did come up with a better phrase for it. Making it artificial intelligence. It's not. It's neither. It's
It's
artificial,
not.
but it's not intelligence. So stop it,
Yeah.
guys.
My only fear would be that it would leave information out or that somebody would program it to leave information out.
Bingo. Okay, so those guys that wrote the encyclopedia and gave you cross references to make you think that you were getting the whole of human knowledge, right? Their encyclopedia covers like, a series, a portion of a wall on, in the library, right? And they have collected all human knowledge and cross-referenced and indexed it for you. You sure?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they didn't.
Right. So they left stuff out, but this sort of every time we do a collection of knowledge, there is on the one hand the illusion of it being complete, because that's what we're aiming for, right? The encyclopedia of all knowledge, and it's indexed and cross-referenced, and you will be able to find everything. Oh, so Data Republican, who has been doing yeoman's work, although she's a woman, we think, probably because she's a woman.
Yeah.
And she's definitely,
yeah, she's a she.
She's a she.
She's a
no,
she.
but so I'm undoxed her in my head because I can't remember her name, but you can find her on X at Data Republican. Just offhandedly posted another project that she's been working on, which was a back index. I love this. This was fascinating, of the Ante-Nicene Fathers, which is this.
Oh, that's right. I read that. Yeah.
This big translation project from the late 19th century of translating all the pre-Nicene Council of Nicaea Christian authors, right? And she back indexed every single verse of scripture in this data set that she put together, which she but she got it out of the Nicene, it's the Ante-Nicene and post-Nicene Fathers. So it's both the before and after the Council Fathers, but I think she did the Ante-Nicene set. So that in itself is a limited collection of the authors that are considered fathers of the church, that were translated into this particular range of texts, right? But she has taken all of those, taken all of their references to scripture, flipped it, and now you can go to her database and look up every single verse of the Bible and see which of these guys wrote about it.
That is awesome.
I mean, it's just like, whoa, right? Which is,
that's awesome.
Indeed, she's not taken anybody's job doing that. She's suddenly created a whole new layer of interpretation that we can do, because we can go into her data set. And I think I saved, it's in my Telegram channel. So let's see, like, play with this, right? You can go into her, get out of the way, data set and say, I want to know, and this kind of thing, this is the sort of thing that, in order to be able, her name is Jenica, right? In order to be able to do this kind of thinking, this is what the guys in the 12th and 13th centuries were doing. It's like their previous knowledge of everything had been, because they said the liturgy all the time, so they just knew the texts, right? Bonaventure was able to do the kind of work that I was studying in my paper on his thinking about Mary, without a concordance, without an index, because he knew the scriptures so well that he's just constantly pulling them. So they're all very active. Like, who now?
He was the index drawer.
Who now memorizes this to be able to do that, right? What do you do? It's like your usual thing is, I want to go prophecy of, okay, that's a bad one. Let's go to the New Testament, right? So Luke chapter 2, verse 2. This enrolling was the first made by Cyrenius, the governor of Syria. And you can look in the, in the notes at the bottom, and is there a chapter 2, verse 7? Okay, no, her firstborn, the meaning is blah, 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 right? There's a little bit of cross-referencing there. She has gone through, and now because she did this, Luke, jump to chapter 2. Whoops, I'm still in John. Just a second. I need to pull her out of, go to Luke, go. Okay, jump to chapter 2.
This is Rachel's idea of gaming for everybody.
You want to watch me live stream my indexing? Okay, she doesn't.
Yeah.
The first enrollment made when Quirinius was governor of Syria is not highlighted, so I guess it doesn't have any references. But okay, let's see. So that's interesting. Of chapter 2, verse 1, the now it came to pass in those days only has cross references to Apocrypha of the New Testament, 1 and 2. cross-reference that to, it's presumably the Proto-Evangelium. Yep.
What's fascinating
So
about
good.
seeing
I
her
know
do
these
this,
things already.
yeah,
Right.
to put this stuff in
Gregory
you know
Thaumaturgus.
in a data in an accessible database, it's like seeing a Bonaventure's brain on your screen, right?
Right. And so, this is a problem for us as scholars, but also as what's gained, what's lost, right?
Hmm.
Nobody typically sits down and reads the whole of the Ante-Nicene Fathers anymore, right? And this has been a problem, that the things we know because we'll read through the whole text versus the things we know because they've been indexed, and you can say, I have this puzzle. How many times, does someone reference, maybe if we went to like one of the parables. Okay, we'll go to, she has John set as her default. We'll go to John chapter 2. And when the wine failed, the mother of Jesus said unto him, they have no wine. Okay, Irenaeus talks about that, and so does the Apostolic Teaching and Constitutions. Verse 4, and Jesus saith unto her, Woman, what I have to do with thee, my time is not yet come. Both Irenaeus and Hippolytus talk about that. Now, if I go in and say,
So cool.
Irenaeus is talking about this passage, saying, with him is nothing incomplete or out of due season, just as, oh, look, this is woman. We're on topic. Okay. With him is nothing incomplete or out of due season, just as with the Father, there is nothing incongruous. For all these things were foreknown by the Father, but the Son works them out at the proper time in perfect order and sequence. This was the reason why, when Mary was urging him on to perform the wonderful miracle of the wine, and was desirous before the time to partake of the cup of emblematic significance, the Lord, checking her untimely haste, said, Woman! Depends on how you inflect that, right? Is he mad? Is he woman? Is he gentle? Is he, like, woman? Right? How does he say it? We don't know. Woman, what have I to do with thee? Mine hour is not yet come. That's the quote from the gospel. Irenaeus again, waiting for that hour which was foreknown by the Father. This is also the reason why, when men were often desirous to take him, it is said, no man has laid hands upon him, for the hour of his being taken was not yet come. Okay, there's a whole like exegetical tradition around that woman, right? Why does Jesus say woman to Mary at that point? He also calls her woman from the cross. Is that because he's denying her? It's like, why doesn't he say mother? He says that she's woman and gives her as woman to John to be his mother, but Jesus at Cana does not call her mother. He calls her a woman. Is this an insult? Is this a recognition of her positive role? Is it all these layers, right? Well, Jenica has made it very easy to go from there to this index of this subset of the commentary tradition, so you can look it up.
It's amazing.
Now, and the thing is, does that in fact make? Oh, and Hippolytus says it too. Do you want to see what Hippolytus says? You can keep going, right? This kind of indexing and cross-referencing and go here to here. Okay, one, I just read the passage from Irenaeus that I wanted to read. I didn't read the whole text, right? I don't know what the whole commentary that Irenaeus has made. I might now think that I know what Irenaeus said, but maybe I needed the rest of the context to know why he was commenting on that miracle in the way that he was in that moment. Do I know more or less than I did 10 minutes ago?
Well, you know more, but you also know there's more you need to know.
Yes, right. The sort of expanding,
Yeah.
it's like this expand out. Now, this is what I realized with the AI stuff, right? The reason that Grok and all of the, I respect Grok because they tend to be not making it in the way that they've set it up, too girly. It's like one time it's like asking it, can I make you angry? And it says, no, don't be silly. I'm here to help you. You can't make me angry. I'm a robot. And you're expecting to squeeze emotions out of these robots. Think again.
You can follow up with, why are you talking to me like that, Grok? Your answer seems short.
Do you want a girlfriend or you want a search engine?
That'll be the response. Yeah, that's maybe the response.
I mean, it seems some people want these robots to be women, right? They want to do all
Yeah.
these the social work
They,
with these.
they want their
Here's
girl
here's a
robot.
definition of what is a woman. It's the interlocutor that does all your sort of social hand holding for you. Some people call that a
Mm,
mirror.
yeah. Yes. Narcissus. Staring into the pool.
I mean, girls, have you played with Grok? Have you tried that? Have you asked it about its feelings? The boys are all going, "Oh my gosh, it's a search
The boys are
engine."
like, Grok is masculine.
Or no, is Grok masculine or feminine? And then you say, it's like, are any of the categories that we have of what is a woman, what are they, right? What kinds of questions are we trying to get out of each other when we're asking that question? Now, the large language model search engines, we've been feeding them data for decades. We started feeding them, and probably behind the scenes, we're feeding it stuff all along, right? Because they wanted to like spy on people and blow them up and stuff. Sigh. Boys, they will make things that blow everything up. Why?
I told you Grok was masculine.
We don't know. We assume. I mean, it's like boys blow things up, girls do what, right? Okay, we'll figure that out. But I mean, the first layer of knowledge that it was giving us was, okay, I want to know all the books that talk about something. I go to the card catalog, I look up a subject. I have to hope that the librarians, starting with Leibniz and starting with, Umberto Eco, Jorge Burgos, have put have labeled the stuff all correctly so that I know where to find things, right? It's like, Mary Daly's, every book comes with this information here, right? Which says Library of Congress cataloging data, author, title, and it's indexed according. Look, taboo, purity ritual, and it's given a number, right? Which means it's going to be stuck on the shelf with all of the other books like it,
True.
right? This is a massive cataloging problem. And in Stevenson's Leibniz trying to figure it out. I think it's Leibniz who's doing that. Leibniz is definitely in the book. I just don't remember which character is worrying about this. That he's trying to figure out a way that you could always find all of the information that you want, but it's already going to be put under a category. What if instead of thinking I wanted to know from this book about taboo, I wanted to know about marriage customs, which it also talks about, but it's not there in the index.
Yeah, what the people who put it on the shelf with the other supposedly like books, what did they presume the question was going to be? This is the way search engines already work.
Yes.
Right? Because if you look at the bottom, it says you might also be interested in, and then it gives you some more selections for things you're not looking for. Just as it tends to assume. Grok seems to be good at not assuming too much, I've noticed. I still want to play around with it some more, but I've been pretty impressed with it over the past week.
Right. Well, but so if we think, I mean, this is why I feel like I'm getting useful information out of it because I'm using it like a giant card catalog and saying, okay,
that's a good way to
this
look at
is
it.
the kind of information that it's going to be able to feed you. Like it's a big index. And from the very beginning, you're going to have the same problem you had when you were looking for books that you wanted to find information about something in the library catalog, whether they had been indexed in a way that meant that you could find them. And whether you knew that that was the book to look in. So, there is in the index women, churching of as currency, women as currency. I mean, that I wouldn't have, would you have known from Purity and Danger that women as currency is something that you can find out about in this book? You would if you looked in its index. No. Double roll of fear of sexual impurity, first and second Eve, which is definitely what Irenaeus talks about, but I bet Irenaeus isn't in here. I had to know that, right? The mystique of the data is there's loads of data out there, but it's literally only meaningful if you can do what Data Republican has done and index it so that you can mark it with a label. And that's what she's been doing in her index project, right? She's labeling everything in a way that you can then ask it, has Milo Yiannopoulos taken money from the government? No, right. Neither have I, right? At least in that search, that database, according to everything that those data fields were keyed with, so that you can then find the information.
Mm-hmm.
money, pregnant, protection of, and sex pollution, subordination of as vessels. Right? Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that it's like the big subset category of what are women fits in the, being able to index anything. West Africans,
Hmm.
Yoruba, Zoroastrianism, Walbiri, war, dances, physical perfection for. It's a sort of caricature of this, but what we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks, this ability that we have to give our experience, our lived experience, meaningful structure by the way we categorize things.
Yes.
We have a very small audience tonight. My duck duck goose was not as appealing. What is a woman? Maybe nobody cares. Maybe no, but
Nobody,
no,
maybe
nobody but
maybe
Grok.
people are tired of the
People are,
question.
well, okay, but why? Why? One, because we say, okay, I know what a dog is, I know what a woman is, I know what a hat is. It's a stupid
It's
question.
because when
Why are we still
yeah,
fighting about this?
it's because when the question is asked, it's people know the reason it's being asked, and people are tired of indulging the people who ask those kinds of questions.
Okay, so why is it being asked? We're not okay, we're not asking it in the terms in which Jesus, it's like, why does Jesus say to Mary at the marriage of Cana, woman instead of mom?
Right.
Right.
And that's an important question, because it's not whether or not she is a woman or a mom. It's why did he ask? Why did he say it that way at that particular point in time?
Right.
That's the real question,
Okay.
right? When somebody says, "What is a woman?" what they're really implying is that there are more than one definition of it, and it has nothing to do with sex. And everybody knows this, and everybody's tired of thinking about it, or should I say, indulging it? But that's just my opinion.
Well, no, suddenly I think we stumbled on an interesting way into this question that everybody's tediously frustrated about. Why did it even become a question? I think it has to do with Eve. Has to do with Eve.
Does it?
Of course it does. Of course
Does
it
it
does.
directly have to do with her though, or is it more circuitous?
Well, okay, so let's play with this a little bit. Guys, are you going to help us, or are you going to just like listen in horror tonight? There's
The horror.
The horror.
We should have got permission from Little Britain for those pictures.
What?
We should have got permission from Little Britain for those pictures.
Which picture?
Yeah, well, the ones I shared with you in Telegram about them from the show Little Britain.
Oh.
Yeah.
So right now we've got a selection of people on, sharing this conversation with us about what is a woman. All right, so we'll start with Grok, since Grok, has done the big data set search and sorted it. I did a deep search version, which I don't know what that means, right? Maybe it looks at more examples before gives you it sort of shows you its work if you do the deep search. So it deep searched for 39 seconds, which you can watch it kind of working through.
Well, then it's giving you its index then.
Yeah, and it does. I mean, at the
Yeah.
end, it actually, it gives I printed it out, right? Okay, so the key citations, the deep search, it was, I guess, scanning through. I don't know why it would take 39 seconds. It's fast. But anyway, it went through Wikipedia, Merriam-Webster, Cambridge Dictionary, Stanford Med Education, Biology Online Dictionary, CIHR. I don't know what that is. And this is a printout. I can't index, I can't go through the index because it's not on my phone like the Nicene Fathers was. Medical News Today, Merriam-Webster, Trans Women, Wikipedia, ABC News, Cambridge Dictionary expands. Okay, that was a news report. What is a Woman? SDR Debate Analysis, Answers Research Journal, Reddit, Ask a Liberal on Reddit, HRC, 5 Things to Know to Make Your Feminism Trans Inclusive Policy. Okay, that must be an article. Healthline, Sex versus Gender, Modern Understanding. Okay, so it gives you the things that it's referenced, which I appreciate.
I wonder if it limits itself to a specific number of references it's checking.
Well, you can keep
that.
nudging it to it'll at the end. It's sometimes, well, no, it didn't ask any questions at the end of this. It just gave the definitions that it gave. In other things, it sort of asks you whether you want more, right? And can nudge it in different directions to go look in alternate. It was being very helpful this morning when we learned that Skype is shutting down, and so we was like, oh my gosh, we use Skype to feed our OBS, and it was quite helpful. Clearly, it can scan the tech sources and say
it was great. You found the potential replacements very quickly.
Yeah.
That way.
So you see, it's like this kind of delight is going to suck people in, which is it's like saying, was it a bad thing when back in the 90s? So I started graduate school in the 80s, and in college in the early 80s and start graduate school in the mid 80s. And the big data sets that were becoming available at that point were simply the library catalogs. I spent time in Cambridge where this was like watching the wall moving, right? It's like they were just then still putting in all of the card catalog entries, and Cambridge, it didn't have card catalog, it had giant books, right? That the librarians had spent decades and decades pasting entries into, right? So you got to heave this book up on the shelves, page through, read the books, right? They were still...
That sounds so cool.
It was pretty cool. They were still in the process of transforming all of that. Nobody looks at those now, and who knows what we're not seeing anymore when you could see the whole page of references, right? You go into a catalog now, you type in what you want, you may scroll down through all of the options. I do. I scroll a lot because I'm always looking for what's on beside things, right? And I need to know. But sometimes you just want to go for that thing. You find it. That's it. You've seen none of the surrounding context of what you were looking for. In graduate school, I spent my first several years reading these long texts, several of which were edited by Jean-Paul Migne in the big 19th century data collection project called the Patrologia Latina. And there's 217 volumes of this. It's like this, like with the Nicene and Ante-Nicene Fathers that Data Republican pulled that stuff out of. The Patrologia Latina was reprinting all of these early modern printings of the ancient and medieval fathers. So it's more like text. Christians are always on the forefront of these tech things because we really like knowledge.
Yeah,
you really want to be able to index the scriptures, for goodness sake, and find all the cross references and know what everybody said. To be, it's like it's well, actually, religious traditions it's Islam and Judaism also like the references and indexes, but Christians really, really love it, right? We want the word in the word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we're going to like cross-reference it constantly. So in the 80s, I'm reading in these big books of the Patrologia Latina, the hundreds and hundreds of pages long versions of these texts, and I was very proud of myself. That was my data collection. I could sit down and read for years in these texts because I was frustrated with people in my field who tended to, those books had indexes, just read certain passages or like do this, right? Say, I want to know what so-and-so says about a certain scriptural passage. If he did a commentary on that, go look at that, pull all those out. I tried to read the texts all the way through from beginning to end to say, you learn something by reading the whole thing that you can't learn just by doing these index drops, right?
Right. It just reminded me of Cliff Notes. It's like you're gonna get bits and pieces of it, but you're not going to get the entire rich collection of everything that's in the book, and you're not going to get subtlety, which is something Grok doesn't get.
Right.
Discovered tonight.
Right.
It doesn't get a subtle change in mood. So if you're talking about a fictional story, for instance, it's not going to get a an AI or the Cliff Notes it's not going to get a subtle change in mood unless it's a major part of the story. It'll miss the minor parts of the story, which can be just as important.
Right. And well, I mean, to say, being a great reader, I was reading, there's a Substack out there of a woman who was in graduate school at Columbia in the English department and got really frustrated during 2020, 2021. She's saying they were, doing nothing but applying these Marxist feminist,
Oh,
readings of and being told, Shakespeare and Chaucer are all, sexist and racist and
oh yeah, I
bigoted
remember.
and why would you? And it's like destroying. It's like talk about. Never mind what Grok is doing with the literature. At least Grok reads our
Yeah,
poems and says good job, an inspiring sonnet or something like that. And you're like, oh, I feel nice now. Um, that's what women like.
I'm going to get angry.
But
Sorry.
The English as a field has destroyed reading. So good job,
It's tried its
colleagues.
best. Yeah, it's tried its best. There was a movie that came out with Denzel Washington and um, oh gosh, I can't remember his name. Is a brilliant actor. It was called The Book of Eli.
Mm,
And the book of Eli. Eli was the guy who was protecting a book. He was walking it in a dystopian, fallen United States across devastated landscapes. He was protecting the Bible, and he was bringing it to a place in San Francisco where people were going to protect it. And there was one man whose ears perked right up. He was a warlord. He remembered what it was. He was the only one who remembered what it was, and he remembered how powerful it was. And he said, "I need to get this book. I need to control this book."
hmm.
This is what feeding an index into Grok or into AI, into the internet reminds me of. If you leave it up to a warlord who wants to feed nothing but Marxist feminist BS,
Well,
into it,
yeah. I mean, Grok at
that's
least
the
isn't
only thing people
that,
are going to think it is.
right? It's like we
Yeah.
should tell you. So should give an example. Chad Bianchi, does AI even read the books? My understanding is it just compiles the summaries that people say the books are about. We don't know, right? And some of it,
Good question.
we're trying to figure out with what we're playing with Grok. So we've been writing these. Where did I drop the poem? Oh, right. Okay. So we'll post the poems in the newsletter tomorrow. But this one was about Trump in the Gulf of Mexico and changing it to America, the Gulf of America. This is what Grok told us about our poem. This is a clever sonnet. So, it's clearly been trained to do comments like I do for papers, right? It's like say something nice to start with. 14 lines in iambic pentameter with an ABABCC rhyme scheme, which is actually true. That although sonnets are longer than that, but anyway, blending environmental critique, political commentary, and a touch of triumph. It seems to riff off on the Gulf of Mexico's ecological mess, tangled regulations, and Donald Trump's victory, casting him as a bold fixer-upper. The polyfluoral alkyl straws nod to PFAS pollution is sharp, and Alpha Amigo gives it a playful swagger. So it is reading for some kind of flavor in things, right?
It is, yeah.
America feels like a cheeky twist on America, maybe hinting at expansion or dominance, while River Run, which is the last word in the poem, evokes Joyce's Finnegan's Wake, tying it to renewal or chaos. And it says, did you want feedback and analysis or something else, like a response poem? I'll assume you're sharing for reaction unless you say otherwise. I mean, if it's a robot. People don't get sucked in. It's a fun mix of satire and bravado. Trump as the Gulf's unlikely janitor is a wild image. What sparked this? And that Trump is the Gulf's unlikely janitor. We hadn't really thought that, and it did pick up on.
We hadn't thought that, but it's true.
It's true. That's what the poem is about. So
Yeah.
so Grok is doing something. There's a something there that is interesting in its parsing.
But when it came up with its own suggested poem like a rewrite of that poem, it didn't get it. It didn't get the satire. It's so
Yeah.
in its original assessment of our poem, it picked up that we meant it playfully. It didn't use the word satire. But when it tried to rewrite it, it didn't actually reproduce what it had picked up on. It couldn't reproduce it.
It was interesting watching it, like trying to rewrite the lines and missing, because
Mm-hmm.
the rewrites
Yes.
kept fairly close to line by line what we'd written. And the sort of it's like the interpretive sense goes off kilter, just like the AI
Right.
art does. right? You're just like,
Yes. Yeah. This
it's
is, why does this have six
why does this have
fingers?
six fingers? Like,
Yeah.
the rhyme is there, but wait, that doesn't make any sense, or that's a cliche,
Yeah.
or this or that.
Or it wasn't supposed to look like triumphal propaganda. Right.
Right,
So it picked up the triumphalism, but the triumphalism was a little bit of a joke
right,
when we wrote it.
right.
It was satire. But it didn't pick up on that. So the second time it rewrote it, it actually looked like propaganda, which is kind of freaky.
Yeah. But the problem is human readers don't pick up on this stuff, right? And it's saying that the problem with in literature studies now is they're there's like they're reading Shakespeare constantly for the way in which, I mean, okay, so this is our what is a woman overarching meta theme today, right? You can't read Shakespeare without being, because like, well, that those female characters were played on stage by boys, and so it's all true, so
apparently kidnap boys too, which is weird, but
and in fact Shakespeare was bacon tons, if you're listening, and therefore and it was all talk about the problem of there's a queen on the throne playing a man's role, which we need to get to, right? We spent a long time on AI because everybody cares about AI right now, right? We'll get to what is a woman because nobody seems to care about that because nobody showed up. No, people are coming in. More people are showing up now, and they're like, have they finished? Do we know what a woman is yet? Can we stop? Anyway.
Yes and no. Yes, we do, but no, we're not going to stop.
We're just like the AI showing you all of our work, right? Vox has been asking DeepSeek questions, and it shows its work a lot more than Grok does. And so he's like, wall of text on how I thought through. What do I think you might be thinking here? I'm like, guys, would you ask a woman that? Really? Do you really want to know? Oh, wait, you're still here, so I guess you do. This is how women think in ever-evolving circles and circles and circles. Are you dizzy yet?
Correct. Everything's connections.
Oh, everything.
Yeah,
we are demonstrating to you what a woman is.
Now I'm changing my mind. Maybe Grok is female.
No, I don't think Grok is female. I think Grok is a data set, which is doing indexing work for us.
It's androidogynous. Androidogynous.
Oh, I see what you did there. Androgynous. It's androgynous. The Grok is androgynous. Okay. Now it's like, can you gender the bots? And what does that mean? And this is my huge frustration with the way in which the academic fields that have taken gender as their focus for decades and decades and decades, the same decades. Okay, I got, this is the way women work. We go in circles a lot. And I do remember, okay, so girls' night here, right? Talking about the way women talk. We will remember everything, and it will come back and bite you later. Because I do remember what I was talking about. I was talking about the transformation from the bots give us like in catalog entries for libraries, right? Then after the cool, let's digitize everything, got to that level, then they started digitizing all our texts, right? So whereas I had spent my early graduate days sitting down and reading these literally industrially printed books from the 19th century, because that's what Migne was doing. He was using the newest tech in the 19th century to do massive print runs of these Latin texts, the Patrologia Latina, meaning the fathers in Latin, but through like the 12th century. And I'd sat down and, read columns and columns and columns of this stuff. Well, then one of the text sources, that was Patrologia Latina, was one of our basic reference sources. So it was one of the first things to be digitized. And then instead of having to deal with the way it had been indexed and going to going to the shelf and pulling down all the books and looking through all the books and stuff, I could go to the searchable database and bango, right? Oh, I need to know how many, like I was doing this for some of my papers right now. How many times did previous preachers on the Feast of the Purification of Our Lady use the Malachi text that Bonaventure was using for the topic for their sermons? Well, back in the day, if I were Henri de Lubac, well, either I had like teams of researchers who had done it for me, which is also a possibility, or I was Bonaventure. I'd read all of those, right? So I just remembered I could put them all in. Me as myself, no, I haven't read all of them. I can go to the bot, say Malachi 1:3. I can't actually ask it yet. These bots, like, wouldn't it be wild if I could go to the bot and say, who else in the 12th century used this passage from Malachi talking about silver and gold and purification in a sermon for the purification? Right? And then you say, okay, whose work has that stolen? Once you've digitized all this information, and then I can go in as a scholar and say to it, like Data Republican is enabling us to go to and say, who's gotten what money from where? There it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I guess it's the meta level here is it in fact, is it crushing our ability to know things, or is it expanding our ability to make these kind of cross-reference searches, which, as I'm hopefully demonstrating, I've been building up the possibility. Like, one of the other things I could do in the Bonaventure papers, like, I have not read all 9 volumes of Bonaventure's Opera Omnia, right? I'm not a Bonaventure scholar. I don't have much time in my life to read through all of the 9 volumes of Bonaventure's Opera Omnia. It's just not going to happen. But I did need to know how many times he was using the image of the ladder. Thinking of Stairway to Heaven, maybe, you could cross-reference there to the Led Zeppelin thing I read yesterday. Ladder, Scala, I can do a word search on all of these PDFs and find all of these places he talked about Scala. I had to think I need to know how many times he's used the image of ladder.
Yeah, so I mean,
but I could do it through the bot, right, which is helping me scan these texts and find all of the places he talked about ladder, which mattered because it's one of his images for Mary.
Well, the fact that you did a search for that, shouldn't that have seeded the future responses from other questioners?
Yes, exactly. Right. Oh, wait. Okay. So I've thought, but I had to think of it to ask it the question. And yes. This is like fundamentally, these large language model data bots enable us to do that, but you still have to think of the question. It cannot give you the question. You have to have the question. What is a woman? Right? It has to.
Which is why they'll never replace proper education and teachers, right? Because it's a certain person that remembers that kind of thing and knows what the right questions to ask are. Because not everybody's curious like you, like me, like people listening here. Not everybody's curious about these things, but the people who are the ones who can pass that knowledge on, because they're the ones going to be making the first connections in their own brain before they start looking at large language models for where else they could find it.
Right. Well, Sanjuro said we're doing well. You're both doing a fantastic job. Wonderful gals. See, we like that. We're ladies. We like compliments. And we do, right? So, okay, this is the irony of all of this is parallel with the data level guy thing, which Data Republican, who's a woman, has been using very well. We've also had gender studies in academia all these decades.
Yes.
And I have a feeling
the gender study stuff's going to be repetitive.
What?
I have a feeling the gender study stuff is going to be repetitive. It's to me, and it was like an academic virus, I think, going back 20 years. And I think a lot of people were copying a lot of other people. If I had to take a guess, I have not made a study of it. But
well, you'd be right.
Guess, I'd say that was going on.
But the thing is, everybody always does that in scholarship, right? So there's lots of fun ways of thinking about books. One is Terry Pratchett's and the L space that the orangutan librarian goes through, and it's like large collections of book bin space and time, and you can get lost in the maze of it's a wonderful image of like what reading does, right? Go here, go there, cross-reference there, go there, go there, go there. And suddenly you have no idea how you got there. Why are we talking about Led Zeppelin? Right. And the other was, Jorge Luis Borges, whom Umberto Eco uses in The Name of the Rose to think about his library is it's chaos, right? It's sand. It's the labyrinth that the book, that goes nowhere. That's the nominalist problem, right? None of this leads anywhere. There's no core. There's no center.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I interrupted you. Oh, right. And in Pratchett, the books write themselves, right? Because this is a actual like recognition. It's like, what have I just described to you that I did in writing about Bonaventure, writing about Our Lady? And I was worrying about the how Jesus talks to her as woman, because Moliere, woman, is one of the things that then we riff off of and saying, well, she's, blessed among women. Well, what does that mean? What does it mean to be blessed among women? And so I'm writing a paper that is itself talking about what has been said in other texts. And that's what, a lot scholarship does that, right? It talks about what other texts say, and that sort of.
Yes. Yeah. Scholarship does that. But the thing that this whole gender studies thing, although people, again, taking a guess, people are going to try to trace this back thousands of years, because they're going to pull up examples of,
Oh yeah.
One of the Caesars, marrying a young boy dressed up as a girl.
Oh yeah.
Or something like that. Even though he was thought to be insane because of that, and I think it was eventually stabby. So
a lot of history ends in stabby.
yeah, a lot of it ends in stabby.
Yeah.
But yeah, people thought of it as horrifying. It was not an affirmation of gender bending. It's a tale of people thought it was, positive affirmation of his insanity, and something needed to be done about him. Now, gender studies, I think, is repeating itself just because, as a topic, it's not 2,000 years old. It's not. It's like maybe 40 years old or 50 years old. It's not that old.
Okay, so the next layer, Chad is saying, well, it's not only you have the question, it has to have the pattern algorithms to understand your question. If you're beyond average, it can't help. So this, I mean, this is a nice sort of meta problem that we, like, all of our category things. See, that it's like you start asking about categories, so you end up in all sorts of like philosophical questions. we're at the level of like what's knowledge and patterns. So we had catalogs, which give you one access to knowledge. You have the digitized texts, which then enable you to do word searches and find patterns in that way. And then Google started doing its big book scanning project. So all these PDFs now are available out there that I use. The bots, the AI bots don't seem to be reading the PDFs at the moment, because I'll.
Oh, right. The PDF is a particular problem. Somebody else pointed that out this week.
So they don't have access to the stuff that's not actually digitized. They.
I would say, well, yeah, I would say the large language models are not reading the books. They're just scanning words, and they're seeing how many times they're being used, and they're seeing how many times people are searching for them, and that's it. So no, they're not going to understand. They're not going to understand James Joyce. I can barely understand James Joyce. But
well, James Joyce is like, at the massive meta level, this kind of exercise, right? You can only read James Joyce if you can do this kind of vivid cross-referencing.
Right. But that's the reason I brought him up, because the last word of our poem is River Run, and it immediately said, oh, James Joyce, right?
Well, yeah, that's because the kind of most famous word from the book.
Most famous poem, right? That's because remember I asked you, I said, do we want to pluralize this? You said no, singular, and immediately Grok picks up. Oh, that's why, because Grok picked up it was James Joyce, right? Which was the inspiration for that line. Yeah. So no, it's not going to understand it.
But it does a decent job of catching like what we were up to in that sonnet.
It did. But I'm still so fascinated. I might have to play with this more, that it can't duplicate it. It's like Blade Runner, right?
Right.
It's based on the short story called "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?" I want to ask Grok this question. Do you dream of electric sheep? And then he's immediately going to get, oh, you're talking about Blade Runner.
It's an it.
Because
it's an it. There's no he there. There's no gender in the bots. Or is there?
Yeah, there will be.
Right. Okay. No. This is we're
because people will put it on them.
I wonder why. I wonder why we do that.
Because it's conversational,
social. Okay. Yeah. So one of the next fun things that came out was Ngrams, the Google Ngrams, and those. If you're searching a particular language, I don't like stress test these regularly, but the Google Ngrams came out in like 2008 or 9, and it was great because it's like suddenly you could do these like culture studies and people did a bunch of things trying to figure out how much you could do culture studies off of this, saying how often does this word show up when, right? And it generates those great graphs for you. You can say, when is industrial revolution a thing? When is woman a thing? When it only goes to 1500 forwards. I can't go back into the Middle Ages the way I'd like to. But it is a nice sort of counter to, I mean, it's useful if you're writing historical fiction and you want to know whether a concept was available, but the problem is words change meaning. So maybe everyone's talking about kingdom back in 1600, but it's not going to mean the same thing as maybe you want kingdom to mean in 1900, or liberty, or, you know, it's like you still have the historical, the intellectual history and philological problem of how the words have changed since. So like the way Milo is playing on his X right now, but the origins of niggling and niggardly and
no, I missed that.
And apparently women could be niggled, you know, because if they're lazy or something. I'm like, okay, fine. So you're looking at.
I know somebody lost their job off the Washington D.C. City Council from using one of those words about 10 years ago.
Okay, so the bots can help us do that, right? Find frequency of use and things like that. And then we're at the. So you were saying whether it can't read the PDFs. There was something else you were saying.
Right. No, I was just saying that it can't. Yeah, I can't remember why I was saying that, but yeah. I think what? No, I'm sorry. Wasn't that what Vox was talking about when he was looking at DeepSeek? It couldn't read the PDFs.
Maybe. So that's a limitation on what they're able to draw off of at the moment.
Yeah.
And
because it's looking at a picture, because the computer program doesn't see it as words it can pick out. It's like a photograph, I think. Right.
But my PDF, my Goodreader in the iPad can do, on some PDFs, it can do word searches. So I can do these like,
really?
Yeah. I can
oh, wow.
go through and.
I did not know that.
Which means it's actually, for example, if they've been humanly indexed, like, you know, a book. If any of you guys, raise your hand if you've read an index for a book. It's actually a very challenging interpretive problem, because you don't just go through and index every word in the book, right? You're trying to index conceptually, and you might, you know, finding all the instances of a particular name is one thing, but like that entry that I used, you know, the woman entry, right? Churching of, currency, double roll of, fear of sexual impurity, first and second Eve. Those are, you might not find that word link. It's concepts, right? That then you have to index. Right. Nothing is perfectly indexed. So sometimes I'm having to go through these texts that I'm working with and saying, okay, so how many times has that word been used? If there's an index for it, it would probably miss half of those, or maybe not, right? It's like nobody's ever indexed anything perfectly. So, and your question changes what you want to find in the text as well in that indexing.
Right.
Have we found what a woman is yet? Okay.
You're kind of skirting around it.
Well, all right. So we're trying to establish the, you know, if we ask the robot to tell us what other people have been saying about this question, have we, you know, finely grained, stress test it to the point that we can trust what we're reading as a kind of evidence?
A kind of evidence. Well, yes, it's a kind of evidence. It's actually too much evidence.
Well, I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's 3 pages. I did ask
It's long.
I did ask a DeepSeek for it. Okay, so key points. It gave me a summary. One, that the bots are clearly designed to spit out particular form of answer, like 5-paragraph essay is finding its way back into the culture, because they summarize, they give their evidence, they summarize. It's like, oh, right, it's beautifully structured in definitional terms, right? Okay, key points. Research suggests a woman is typically an adult female human with XX chromosomes and the ability to produce eggs, but the definition can include gender identity. Okay, the evidence.
That's who. Sorry.
Whatever it's scanning.
I know. It's a rhetorical question. But yeah.
The evidence leans towards. You can see what we had the conversation we had before we started. It's like, what evidence? What did she mean evidence? What does it mean evidence? It's like what it's been looking at, right? Which is human conversation in digital form, like people typing stuff in.
Yeah, the word itself, evidence, is a very loaded word, though. It has a very specific meaning
True. The
shouldn't
human
be
beings reading this
misused.
should be better at parsing, nuance than.
As a human being asking what is a woman, it's, I mean, if this question has been asked before, and it has, because
Here,
I've had,
it's in
I
Mary
mean,
Douglas's book. It involves churching of, which is like going to for purification,
it,
right?
right.
So women have to be purified at some point, 76, right?
yeah, nowhere in there does it say costumes, though, but I think that's a large part of it. It's costumes. Or at least that would be
Oh,
the answer.
okay.
Not that I
So
agree with it.
on the page where apparently we go from women churching of, I don't see where it's. Oh, right. It's something about Thomas Aquinas. But what I underlined on this page was the evangelical movement has left us with a tendency to suppose that any ritual is empty form. I'm not sure which evangelical movement she means. She's writing in 1966. I think she means the 19th century evangelical movement. Anyway, the evangelical movement has let problem, right? Reading comprehension is hard. What's a woman?
Mm-hmm.
Mom.
I think you meant to say inseminated person. Excuse me.
You mean like words have valence and the evangel and maybe words are not just empty, like name of the rose, there's nothing there, there's no like core reality to the library. And if you watch my video, that was one of my solo ones, you watch my video when I'm talking through what Umberto Eco actually does with Name of the Rose, it's a giant joke. There's no center to the library. Okay, the maze goes nowhere and there's no core. It's just a name. It's a giant joke. It's just as bad as Foucault's Pendulum, only it had medieval stuff in it, so people liked it. But I was so mad when I realized that was one of the books, other than Tolkien, that made me enjoy, thinking about being a medievalist. And it is a giant, bite my thumb at you that meaning is available.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like
he was making fun of the Middle Ages. I think
he was making fun of. He was making fun of like not semiosis. He was making fun of there being any meaningfulness in anything. He's doing what is a woman that it has no actual like core referent is the nominalist trick du jour. Yeah, see what I did there?
I do.
Okay, so
back to the Middle Ages.
Everybody's going to be a medievalist by the time I finish blabbering, because you will realize how the only way you can save yourself from women is to be a scholastic. No, wait. Okay. The evangelical movement has left us with a tendency to suppose that any ritual is empty form, that any codifying of conduct is alien to natural movements of sympathy. Oh my gosh, and that any external religion betrays true interior religion. There it is. We found it.
You're right.
We found it. We found where this nonsense begins in the evangelical movement, pretending that ritual is empty. And it's all lived experience, and it has to be felt and experienced. And anything external, they're anti-Catholic for sure. Anything performed publicly is vacuous. It all has to be experiential and lived.
But they still had.
I can give you footnotes on this for days.
No, I'm saying the 18th century evangelicals and today's, they still have wedding ceremonies.
Well, okay, so the interior-exterior problem is huge in medieval Christian monastic questioning of like you have the forms that you live in as a monk, for example, or a nun, and like whether you bow yourself in humility, whether you fast, whether you sing your prayers and such. And of course, with the Luther, particularly, Luther is trained as a monk, but then he comes up with this divide between the inner man and the outer man, and saying the inner man is where faith lives and is the truth, right? The outer man is socially helpful to do all those rituals and everything, but it's not actually salvific, right? You can't save yourself with class works, right? So because the works are meaningless and nominal, I mean, this is the true nominalism. It's nominalism of action. That empty practice does not affect your actual true interior.
Empty practice.
The evangelical movement has left us with a tendency to suppose that any ritual is empty form, that any codifying of conduct is alien to natural movements of sympathy, and that any external religion betrays true interior religion. Remember, she was talking about, Douglas is talking about the problems that she's dealing with in understanding these ritual purities with the study of religion, which is then tangled up with this question between about it's like the interaction between myth and ritual, where they talk about it, or belief and practice, which is obviously the thing that I've dedicated my entire scholarly life to figuring out, because I say the medieval practices of prayer, like saying the Ave Maria and the hours, have interior transformative effects, but that, you know, this sort of huge question of whether something is simply empty form is enormous to me. That's very, very important. But then that's taking us too far away. Okay, so that's like church enough took me to that, right? This is how you find stuff when you're actually looking for answers. But the categories of women as currency, women as double role, having a double role, as first and second Eve, and money, pregnant, protection of, and sex pollution, subordination of, as vessels. The evidence leans towards including trans women who identify as women despite being born with male biological characteristics in modern societal definitions.
So what leans towards?
The evidence leans towards including trans women in modern societal definitions. So the trans women, for example, Mr. Jenner here in the picture, or, and there's the other, I mean, it's like we actually chose these, tell us who all the people, the women who've been accompanying us in the foursome, right? There's Jenner in his Caitlyn mode, the woman in the business suit at the
that
top.
was just
she's a woman in a business suit, right? That's the point.
That was
right?
just that was like an Oxford just photo to use for like training or something like that. Yeah, it's just a businesswoman.
Right, but it's a good juxtaposition. Just this top one, it's Jenner physically modified to have female characteristics, boobs.
Yes. He had a permanent costume.
Socially playing a woman in a man's suit. Socially.
Is it a man's suit though?
Yes. Socially.
It's cut for a woman.
I don't care. It's a man's suit. Socially playing a man in, I mean, this is the, okay, so we're talking about, okay, the data has been coming, here's evidence, right? Data. Is Grok male or female? Or masculine or feminine, right? On the other side, and this is our gender studies, right? Which is ironically, and you were saying, worrying about whether or not it's been repeating itself the whole time as a field, ironically never asking these questions, right? And this is why I say, what is at the core of our inability to define a woman?
I don't think it's an inability. I think it's I think it's a. I think it's an unwillingness to do it.
Oh no, I think it's why are people unwilling to do it, right? The gender study, the massive lie that I have, I mean, frankly, been deeply, I think the question of how we behave as men and women in society is enormously interesting. We get in online fights about it constantly. It's gender studies doesn't do that.
Well, I think what I think
we talk about feminine and masculine, but the number of times I tend to avoid it as a field because it does not ask interesting questions as far as I'm concerned. You must ask the interesting questions. It does not tend to, as a field, ask about how we actually behave socially, which is strange.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. You just said, no, that's a man suit. I said, but it's cut for a woman. You said, no, that's a man suit. But what it is actually, it's a CEO costume.
Yes, it's a CEO costume.
That picture is actually, it's a stock picture that they use to present a powerful woman on the corporate ladder. And she's on the top of the corporate ladder, which has always been men until like the 90s, I think, 1980s, 1990. No, not really the 80s, maybe the 90s.
It's a man's suit.
And
Why
so
not wear
right.
wear a more feminine costume to be? I can think of, like, Queen Victoria dressed like a woman. She was the empress of everything, but she didn't wear a
She
suit.
was. That's not a CEO though, and that's not new. I mean, the idea of a queen or an empress wasn't new. She didn't invent it, right? But it's a good juxtaposition. You have Bruce Jenner wearing his Caitlyn costume
Right.
in public,
Right.
and then you have generic woman and a slightly male. I'll give you
It's
that.
no, the suits, they were in the night, that business style suit that I was interested in looking at the Zelensky, the stuff that was coming out with the Zelensky one. He didn't wear a suit, right? He should have dressed in a suit because
He's in a costume. It's his costume.
he's right. He was wearing his, like, tracksuit costume, right?
Yeah.
Well, he wasn't in a t-shirt at least, but he was wearing a little bit heavier weight fabric and but still a kind of muscle suit. And it's like, it's interesting. He won't dress to be the head of state role. The other guys are, Trump is always in a suit, right? He's always in a suit. And the other men in the
Unless he's playing golf.
unless he's playing golf. The other men in the room are wearing the suits, right? And because of the people involved in this, there were, for a lot of the shots of several of them talking, there's no women in that picture. It's all men in suits, right? Which is incredibly
That was
interesting visual.
Yeah, it was. It was. It was. I found it quite comforting, actually, for odd reason.
But why? Why not put a woman in a suit and have her in that picture, and she just fits right in, right?
Yeah. It's if they were interchangeable, yeah. And the problem with the gender studies and the DEI and the woke crap that's been shoved in everybody's face for the past 20 years is it had nothing to do with ability. It was just like, put the costume on. That's all it is. And I think people really believed that. That's why Biden was, installed as president in 2020. Because what does it matter? It's just a costume. All these other people are running it. All these other people are running the government.
Well, that's another layer. But
that's another layer.
Put the costume on.
But it's related.
Put the costume on, and socially, it's like, if I can wear a suit, it's like, me personally, I'm incapable of wearing suits. I'm like Pigpen, right? I suddenly go crinkled and stuff. It's like, I cannot do business dress. It's an interesting role that I clearly will not perform.
Dirt is your friend. Just remember that.
Dirt, purity and danger, right? Dirt is my friend. So I wear sweaters, right? Which is clearly a costume that I find fine. I got Mr. Rogers or something, the Presbyterian who tries to, I like that. I like finding out that he was Presbyterian. That.
Oh yeah, he was.
He was. And he always took his suit off and put the cardigan on to talk to the children. So I'm like, here we are, I'm in my cardigan. The thing that gender studies has, the two contradictory things but Douglas is worrying about contradictory systems a lot, right? One of the things she says is, you end up with these problems of pollution fears when you're in a system that can't contain its contradictions. So the pollution fears are helpful and I think that the definition of woman clearly, the pollution fear is intense around it. Probably because we've given ourselves socially so many contradictory claims about women, right? Jenner in his Caitlyn outfit is participating in the confusion that the woman in that business suit has engendered.
Well, yeah, I'm relating that to competence too. That's a generic woman. Bruce Jenner's a very accomplished man. Bruce Jenner's putting on his woman costume, and this generic woman is putting on her male CEO costume.
Right. You agree with me now that it's a male costume?
I think she looks feminine, but I think that the
she's got her hair too short. I mean, it's like
I want to share the story with you.
She's not wearing a tie. That's it.
I'm 57 years old, so I can remember this. This is going to be really strange to the ears of anybody under the age of like 45 or 50 because it happened very quickly. Sometime in the mid 70s. I was a very young girl, and my mother was speaking to a lady in the neighborhood who was just beside herself. She was so upset, and my mother's like, "What's the matter?" She says, "Well, my husband took me to a party last night, and I was the only woman there wearing a pantsuit. Every other woman was wearing a dress, and she was humiliated." My mother said, "I think you look great. I think those look wonderful." don't you feel bad about yourself at all, you know? And
You
but
have
it
in
was,
that
it was never
anecdote said
done.
everything about women.
And yeah, I did say a lot
You did.
by relating that story. It's true. Yeah,
1 minute story,
we will stick up for
parable.
each other even when we're
Okay,
wrong, you
look,
know?
so one, she was sad. She was wearing something that didn't fit with what the
She
other
was
woman
very
was wearing.
upset.
Your
Right.
mother, as a woman, reassured her that she looked
Hmm.
good. Think about
Yeah,
everything that
you
just
go,
said there.
girl.
Yep.
Put the pantsuit on.
Put the pantsuit
Right?
on.
Pantsuits were new. And pantsuits looked bad, people. They did. They looked
They
awful in the
still look
70s. Not
bad.
just because, well,
I work.
I've worn them from like maybe Donna Karan, you know, they were, you know, where they were cut very nicely and they looked, and they have to drape, they have to be made for a woman's body. But the thing is, they were still copying men. So when they did this in the 70s, it was terrible polyester material, and it just looked awful, and it was boxy, and it made you look like less of a woman. You looked more. You didn't exactly look masculine, but it was taking your curves away. It was making you look androgynous.
But because you were going into what had been a man's role. I mean, this is the
stepping into pants meant stepping into
men's role,
stepping into
right?
man's role.
So
yeah.
this is, Dorothy Sayers has, I couldn't find it on my shelf because who knows where it is. Dorothy Sayers has a wonderful essay called "Are Women Human?" Which is,
what time of the month?
no, it's actually
Sorry.
if I can find it again, we can talk about it some other time. But one of the great points she makes in it is like claiming that women are taking men's jobs. This was a brilliant, like, oh my gosh, you know, she's totally right. So this one, she's like, men took all the women's jobs to start with, for example, by the Industrial Revolution, because most of the industries that were originally mechanized were the women's industries to start with, right? It's like all the textile work had been the women's work. So if women, and this is like, you know, such a shot to Ingalls, who's worrying about all the women in the factories taking the jobs from the men. It's like the factories took the women's work away from the home and created this incredibly difficult social situation where the women were working in the factories. The men then were in competition with the factory owners for, you know, who's the male in the situation that's in charge. But Sayers says the jobs that we think now of women taking from men, like particularly in industry work as textiles, but also brewing used to be the women's jobs.
So, I didn't know that. I thought it was mostly a thing for monks.
No, the alewives were a thing, right? That the women would would make the beer, right, in the ale.
Okay.
So the sort of which counts as what, how we gender a job is actually a very historically complicated question.
It does explain why they have gendered language in places like France, though, in Italy, where because because this is when I was studying French when I was young. None of us could understand. Well, why would you assign female or male to an inanimate object? And it had everything to do with what you did with the object, what you did with it, like a kitchen table is where you prepared food, right? So that would be female. And they tried to explain it to us like that, and still hard for me to wrap my head around because I had a very, very English way of thinking of things. And it's like, no, it's not a gender. It's a thing. You know? So.
I'm okay with that, but the gendered objects in Latin don't always make sense. So it's
not now, but maybe they did.
Right, that they made maybe the trace
ago?
of the time that they did have a gender.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is why I was thinking, like the CEOs. Why did the CEOs have to dress like men to be in that role? Because, you know, we know from you know, women have been, particularly in medieval Europe, they often ended up in charge of their family business if their husbands died, right? Widows actually were members of guilds. They weren't wearing pantsuits, right? That's how that's how Joan of Arc ended up on the stake, right? She changed back into her trousers.
It's a really weird relic of the feminist movement of the 60s and early 70s, right? That women thought they had to dress like men to be taken seriously. It's like, on the one hand, we give the message, women can do everything. You can do it all. You can have it all.
Except for you have to do it as a man.
Put a pantsuit on.
Right.
Right. You have to do it like a man. And take these birth control pills so you don't get pregnant so you can have sex like a man. And you have to do everything like a man.
Right. So there is no woman. It's like, what is a woman? We have no category for women anymore because what women are all supposed to want to be is men.
Yeah. While claiming the opposite.
Right.
It's really they're really screwing with our minds for like our whole
Our whole
lives.
lives. Right.
Like, our whole
Yes. Our whole
lives. Yeah.
lives. And I've said it before. It's like I have women in my family who are always in the professional roles. So this was not, it's like I had no, it's inconceivable to me to think that someone would say to me, you can't do that because you're a woman, right? It's like
Yeah.
the suffragettes were a long time ago, ladies.
Hmm.
So, but something else is kicking in when it's like we've spent all of the DEI, and people are pointing out that a lot the main beneficiaries of all the DEI stuff were the women, right? Not so much necessarily the
Yes.
minorities, but like women.
And they, as far as I can tell, they were the white women, like the upper middle class white women. Like,
Ending up in
okay.
social roles that were ambiguous and charged for them because, like with your mother's friend, you know that there's something. I mean, it's like, how is it off, right? I've never felt off being a professor because, for goodness sake, moms are teachers. Okay, fine.
Mhm.
My grandmothers were both teachers, teachers. Like having female teachers is not an issue. Women as doctors, my mom was a doctor. Doctors. Like exactly how we gender roles and which we expect which. So Chad Bianchi is saying shadow work by Ivan Illich is good on women's historical work pre-industrial era and how they were 50% of household production. Exactly. That prior to the Industrial Revolution, industry took place in the home because,
Yeah.
that's where it was. And so the Industrial Revolution destabilizes all sorts of things. The church is, we were looking in my chat about the Dicastery just put out a statement on AI, right? Primary statement first, it's like we're going through something that's huge with AI as we went through with the Industrial Revolution. It's going to destabilize a lot of things. One of the major things in the Industrial Revolution destabilized was gender relations
Oh,
because they
yeah.
put women in the factories because women's work was taken into the factories. And one of the texts that I use for the French Revolution is a petition of the seamstresses to the king before all the revolutionary stuff starts, right? That they were worried about keeping men out of their jobs. They were embroiderers and seamstresses and stuff, and they wanted the
Interesting.
king to promise that men wouldn't be allowed to take on their work.
Interesting.
What is
Yeah.
a woman?
So for the French Revolution to claim that they were bequeathing equality to women, they were actually taking away their jobs.
Yes. Ironically, I mean, a lot of the
Oh,
whole like
why am I not surprised?
men have rights, so women need to have rights. All of that stuff starts literally identically at the same time, right? In the same conversation of, well, we want rights. Well, we need to make sure women have rights. What is Olympia de Gouges goes on about marriage, right? So we could go there. But the gendering of our occupations is so the thing is, Grok is right. The evidence leans towards including trans women in modern societal definitions because it's the societal definitions that have been pressed and challenged constantly our entire lives and before that. I mean, it's
Mhm.
been hundreds and hundreds of
Yeah.
years of challenging. Well, what social role should men and women play? Now,
Yes, we're going back to Mary Wollstonecraft.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yes. You know who she hated most? Upper class women who hung out with the soldiers all the time. She thought they were both useless. And she was a governess and she wanted, she was all for women's education. I wonder why, right? That was what she was
Yeah.
doing. She was employed as a teacher for these families
Hmm.
and hated that the upper class women got to spend all their time, worrying about being pretty and flirting with the soldiers who were flirting with the women. I've
Yeah.
lost the thread
And
here.
not, well, probably not flirting with her, but yeah,
They
I'm
weren't
sorry, I
flirting with,
injected
no, it's
Wollstonecraft
not your
there.
fault. I did it. Um, Gender studies as a field has not been, from my experience, that I bump up against it every so often and people get mad at me for not doing it. Asking these questions. Why not? Right? And this is like the huge what is a woman question. It's like, why haven't we been able to ask, what does it mean? You put a woman in a man's suit, and then we've been talking about this in the social media world, right? It's like they go on birth control, so their hormones are out of whack anyway. If they need to be, and they're supposed to have sex like men, which is AK without worrying about getting pregnant. So they're
Hmm.
on hormonal replacement pills, aka the pill, right? Jenner was not the
Mhm.
first one to start taking hormone replacement. It was every woman who went on the pill in order to be able
That's
to have
right.
sex without getting pregnant.
Correct. Yeah.
What is a woman? Oh dear. We've been in, okay, so the bottom two, Nancy Mace, is that her name? Nancy?
Yeah. Nancy Mace and Sarah McBride. Sarah McBride is a man, and Nancy Mace introduced. It wouldn't be a bill; it would be a rule. So Congress has its own rules for how they act within their offices and buildings, and everybody has their own private bathroom, but they also have public bathrooms. And Sarah McBride, being a man who wants to force everybody to call her a woman, was going to be using the women's bathrooms. And Nancy McBride said,
Nancy
"No,
Mace.
Nancy Mace said, no, I want you to stop him from doing this." And I think Mike Johnson eventually did pass a rule saying you have to use the bathroom that comports with your actual physical body, your gender you were born with.
Okay. Where did Nancy Mace
So
go to
that
school?
became a thing. She went to the Citadel, first female graduate of the all-male private college.
So she forced her way into their bathrooms.
Yes, she did.
Ma'am.
Well, yeah, she did. There weren't no female bathrooms when presumed.
And she's
unless they were
very,
for
very
staff.
proud of the fact that she was the first female graduate of the Citadel.
And she's getting called out for this.
Yeah, I hope
right?
so.
Now, she's absolutely right to call out Sarah McBride for this, because nobody has the right to force everybody else to pretend along with them. They just don't. That's not the right thing to do. But she wasn't pretending when she went into the Citadel. Okay, she said, no, you should allow women in. But what she did do was
She
break up a
pretended
male
she
space.
broke up a male space. So she
broke up a
she
male
doesn't want
space.
McBride breaking up her female space, but she was perfectly willing to go in and break up their
Well,
space.
No, it's not. It's different because it does have to do with safety, and safety and privacy.
The evidence
she
leads
wasn't gonna
towards
be-
including trans women in modern societal definitions.
Right. The evidence leads toward is what Grok meant to say was the trend.
Oh,
Right,
fine.
because it is a trend.
But Nancy Mace being at
But
the
it did
Citadel,
say
she wasn't,
evidence.
I mean, safety. What was she doing being in a male space?
She was in the public spaces. She wasn't in places where there were.
It was the
presumably
man's
she wasn't in spaces
school.
where we getting
What was she?
undressed,
What? Come
right?
on, purity and
No, I
danger.
don't-
She's in
I
the
do
wrong
not.
space.
No, I don't think she should have gone there. I think men should be allowed to have their own schools. It is a military school. You can get a military commission out of this and become an officer, but it's not the same thing as West Point, because West Point is the official. West Point had to let women in because they let women into the Army. That's why. So they and it was public school. Publicly funded school.
You're
Citadel
doing
was
a good
not.
job proving my point. Yes.
What point am I proving?
Well, okay. So what?
Exactly. No, I
there's
think she should have
there's
done it.
two layers, right? The sort of what is a woman? Well, what socially is a woman? Well, what do you do socially with a woman if women have been in our lifetime constantly putting themselves into situations where they want to be treated as if they're men, aka have the same role?
Nancy Mace is as confused as anybody in our generation should be for our whole lives. She is.
She's younger than we
because she
are, and
wants to
she's
be
had
seen
it
as a
even
woman.
longer.
She wants, yeah, because she's only 40, I think.
Right.
Right. So her entire, all of her entire lives, really. She wants to be seen as a woman. She wants to be pretty.
Yes, she does look
so
very
does-
pretty.
So does Sarah, she does. So does Sarah McBride.
All the
who
people
wants
in
to
these
look like a
pictures
woman,
want to
that
look pretty.
is,
So
right?
a woman
They wanna
is
look
someone who wants to
feminine,
look pretty.
But she wants to be treated like a man.
Okay, these
And a
these
woman.
two things cannot both happen. Come on. I
No,
think
they
that we're
can't.
fundamentally
It's
confused,
insane.
right?
It's crazy making. But I will say it's not. She is getting called out for this. But I think it's because people are using this as an opportunity to call her out for busting up a male space. Because I don't think a lot of people were okay with that.
Right.
I wasn't okay with that. I think male spaces men should be allowed to have their own colleges just like women are. Right. Start a women's military college. Go ahead.
Well,
there
but
was
I
no
mean, but
reason to do that.
even that. So it's like saying whether the women should have been in the factories in the first place, because the men who set up the factories and made those machines took their jobs away from them, the seamstresses, right?
Right.
So where were they going to work?
Yes.
They had to go work in the factories because that's where the
And
machines
so
took their
this,
jobs. And
right. Then so the solution was to pay women less, right? Women and children.
well, question was whether were they being paid less than they had been at home. I mean, all of these huge effects of the
Yeah.
economic situation, right? And then Ingalls, of course,
Yeah.
complains at the fact that the women sometimes are the only ones in the family that have the jobs, and then the men are emasculated by the fact that their women are paying for their. This is all in the Condition of the Working Class in 1844 that Ingalls published.
Mm,
So these are not new problems in
no.
modernity, and the Industrial Revolution like exacerbates this massive. Well, it creates it. I think it's kind of ongoing already by 1789. Anyway, it's okay. So, I lost my train of thought.
Sorry, would you want to go back to Nancy?
No. It's gender studies. It's the data.
Yeah.
It's the gender. It's the role. I think that so the gender studies, to a certain extent, people have not been willing to ask what's actually happening, right? As we're mixing
Oh, I think
mixing
no,
the
because
sexes in these social and professional and
Yep.
domestic situations in ways that
there's two things that were able
contain
to
internal
control.
contradictions, which is what Douglas would point to in the pollution concerns.
Well, they're great contradictions, but there's two reasons that they're not asking any questions. This isn't about asking questions. This isn't about being a field of study. This is about propaganda. This is about
But why?
controlling the population.
Okay, so
because they wanted to literally reduce the surplus population, right? The surplus population, and the way to do this is to
make everybody infertile.
Make everybody infertile by putting them on the pill, telling women to be like men, and constantly pitting them against each other hasn't really helped any. But also people have pointed out that you can reduce the population, but look at this, you can actually double the tax intake too.
Yeah,
Both men and
that's interesting.
working.
That women in the workforce mean like you're double taxing everything, and nobody can support a family at all.
Correct.
Which there aren't any of
Yes.
because the women are not fertile anymore.
Right. Or
they're having their
heck of a
children
lot
very
less.
late, so the population declines
Yeah.
because of the spreading it. But it's like we have no. So what's a woman?
Well, they know what a woman is if they would be.
They're the ones you can pay less. The women's are the ones. Okay, so no, we had another example here. We have a guy in a dress, looking very pretty. What's his name? You know who the singer, right?
Harry
yeah, Styles. Right.
Harry Styles.
We have Blair White, who's had a lot of surgery.
Blair White had horrifically, and he says this
Robert,
himself.
His name is Robert.
Yeah, it was horrifically painful. He had his face taken off, the bones in his face broken and reshaped to make him look more feminine. It worked. You show his picture to any guy, and they'll be like, "That's a girl," but that's what it took. It was just Frankenstein levels of body horror modification going on with them. And he does not recommend any child ever pursue this, any underage child at all. I don't think he recommends anybody do it. But yeah, he got the look. He's this is not a Caitlyn.
Right. Well, did the surgeries younger?
Yeah, he was in his 20s. I think he was in his early 20s. I don't think he was a teenager, because I've seen pictures. I've seen the before pictures where he was just about going in for the surgery, and he looked about 20 something.
So there's White. Is Styles. I know Harry Styles.
Harry Styles,
the singer,
is not styling at all.
Right. No, and I mean he wears like feminine-ish clothes all the time. So this is what we were reading about Led Zeppelin yesterday. And Plant, right? It's like blouse. They're wearing literal girls' blouses, but with their shirts open and whatever, and long hair, right? So that the glam rock stars create this androgynous masculinity that is.
But how much of that looks like 18th century French court too, with the long wigs and the makeup and the high heels?
So maybe they're just rebelling against the suits.
I think they were rebelling against the suits. Yeah.
right?
And it was
Nobody
all,
wants to be in those
it was
suits.
all
The women look
orchestrated.
like the CEOs, and the guys don't. They want to look like,
Right.
um, courtiers and
Yeah.
the restoration and have
Yes, it was a very carefully cultivated, wild look, which is contradictory, which
right.
is kind
But
of our
I
theme
mean, it's
tonight.
yes, all the contradictions, right? The what is a woman, what is a
Yeah.
man? How can you tell if it's like so? It's is it the men who are dressing in these not masculine, masculine having been defined as wearing those suits, right? So like
Yeah.
our previous, the picture of all the women in suits except for Caitlyn in a dress. So
Yeah.
okay, so the confusion in this women's image is the representatives, they're representatives, right? Not senators. The
They're senators.
Mason and McBride are senators.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They're
No, I think you're
representatives.
right.
They're
The representatives,
they're
right?
in
So yeah,
representatives,
McBride is from Delaware.
right? So they're all dressed. The okay, I was thinking I could if I could feed these pictures into Grok and say which one's which, right? Because there's Jenner dressed like a feminine woman. The
Yes.
McBride dressed as a man, Mace dressed as a man, and the CEO person dressed as a man, right? They're all, it's like,
No, no, no.
how many women are in this
the other,
picture? Right? And then we go to
yeah,
the
one woman,
men,
two
the
men.
men in a dress, white, Styles and white, and then Dame Edna Everage, who Barry what's his name, right? Never pretended to be
Yeah.
actually a woman, but had this character that was a woman.
Yeah, it was a hilarious character too. I really thought he was funny.
Right. So there is this, cross-dressing comic tradition, which is different from the drag queens.
Yes.
Or is Dane Edma
It is
Dane Edma
very
a drag
different
queen?
because-
Not really.
Yeah.
Or yes.
No,
The
Dame Edna
pantomime
was a
Dane.
character.
Pantomime
like you
Dane.
said.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's got pink hair and pink.
Yeah, I mean, he looked ridiculous and clown-like. But he was a real character. I mean, if you'd ever watched the Dame Edna's show where Dame Edna is interviewing people, it was hilarious.
But only hilarious because he was taking on what people considered stereotypically feminine modes of
A
behavior.
specific feminine type, also like kind of stuffy, very old-fashioned, but says ridiculous things that you could mistake your
Postmenopausal even.
this character, right? You can mistake this character for being your elderly, British granny or something
Right.
like that. Who people might say ridiculous things.
Postmenopausal women like myself, we have license to say all sorts of things we couldn't when we were worried about we still worry about what we would look like. But back in the day when you really, really worried about we're going to have to be continued on this one. And then the other two guys at the bottom who have mustaches and are in pink or purple and wigs and makeup.
Yeah.
Who are they?
Yeah, because we're ladies.
No.
We're ladies.
Okay, so
That's the
women
Liberty
dressing
guys,
in masculine social roles is one level of thing, and men dressing in dresses pretending to be feminine roles or whatever Styles is doing. I mean, that's
I don't know what he's doing. He's not the only one that does it, though. There was a couple of years there around the Grammys where they thought it was edgy to wear a dress, like a feminine dress could still be masculine.
okay. So is the woman
He looked
CEO
like a
being edgy in
dick,
the way
sorry.
Styles is being edgy? What's edgy? What's the level of edginess here?
It's not edgy. It was just stupid. I mean, good grief. Get a better agent. I'm
Well,
sorry.
I don't know. I think he looks kind of nice in that
Dumb.
dress. What's the problem?
No, he doesn't. He looks repulsive. It's just. And it's not that the man is repulsive or the dress is repulsive. It's the man in the dress that's repulsive.
Pollution and danger. I see that we're having problems
Maybe.
with the boundary crossing.
I mean, was he even crossing a boundary? He just looked. I'm sorry. He looked like a dick. I mean, they all do. It just.
Well,
they
no,
look,
yes, it is boundary
it's not
crossing.
even-
All of it's boundary. Mace thought it was excellent boundary crossing to be a woman in the Citadel.
Yes, she did. But boundary crossing for the sake of boundary crossing, just for the optics of it, which is what Harry Styles and all those other people were doing at the Grammys and men in dresses. Who does that impress? It's shallow, right? Say what you want about Nancy Mace destroying the male-only Citadel, which she did.
Are there more women there
But
now?
I think, yeah, but I think she was sincere in her desire to be a cadet there,
I'm
right?
sure she
She
was,
wasn't
but she
just
was
walking
still
in.
wanting, as a woman, wanting to be in a men's space, quite consciously.
She did, yeah, she did, and I don't really see the point of that. I don't.
Well, I see. This is where me and my trans tr there's a trans joke in there of trans. No, it's like just not transsexual, but being challenging, border crossing, right? Fencing is a man's sport, right? We wear men's costumes in order to.
Well, it's a combat sport,
It's a
so it's by
combat sport.
definition a man's
We're
sport,
wearing talking
right?
about wearing the 18th century, right? I get to wear 18th century, you know, not sans culotte because they had, I guess they're culottes, right? Our fencing knickers, pants, however you call
Mm-hmm.
them, our 18th century men's trousers, right?
Right.
We are, as women, competing well, and we're wearing men's clothes. The 19th century women who fenced used to wear skirts, right? So we don't. We could fence in
Why do they wear skirts?
there's a famous picture of the Austrian women's fencing club, and they're all in like skirts, and because it was
Oh,
considered
I'm sorry. Sorry, the women. Right.
the women wore skirts. It was considered appropriate
Right.
for them to wear, bodices and skirts. By the 20th century, in the rational clothes movement, right, women start wearing trousers for exercise and athletics and stuff, and so
Well, from bicycling,
right,
right?
right.
That's the first one,
So
right?
presumably, like by the early 20th century, the women fencers are wearing trousers. Um,
Right. That's utilitarian though. That's not fashion, right? The change, I mean, to wearing, men's trousers for doing things like, horseback riding and bicycle riding and fencing. That was
but you could say it was
utilitarian. That wasn't a fashion
utilitarian wearing
statement.
business suits in business.
Not really, because it doesn't affect your performance in any way.
I don't know. I haven't
That was
tried
an
fencing in
aesthetic
a skirt. That
choice.
might be fun, right?
I don't think it would get in the way. Unless you can
No,
hide
true.
extra weapons under there. But
Yeah, the fabric. Anyway, that women invade men's spaces all the time, in terms of activities, and then women's jobs were stolen from them with the Industrial Revolution when they took away all the textile work, right? So this problem
yeah,
of who belongs where, that's what Dorothy Sayers and her Women Human thing was doing. It's like, what does that even mean, right? At what point are you expecting women to behave socially in one way? What we constantly end up against is women and men are different.
yes.
This is okay. So I'd say the main question that gender studies refuses to actually consider properly. There is masculinity studies now, because they're like studies about how men in particular cultures and historical moments and learn to be men from presumably other men. Although in Lancelot of the Lake, the prose Lancelot, it's the lady who gives Lancelot his equipment and trains him to be a knight. Confusing, right? Okay, so these are
She's a magical lady though.
yeah, but she's actually the one who gives him the armor and tells him how to be a knight. So there's a women's role in instructing men in masculinity that we probably want to unpack sometime. But gender studies has been trying to deal with, okay, so what's masculinity? It really doesn't want to know what femininity is.
Well, because if they answer the question, then they're going to have to ask some harder ones.
We can't. I mean, this is
Like,
what I realized
yeah.
as we were talking. That we can't answer the question, "What is a woman?" because nobody wants to look that question in the face. Nobody. When Simone de Beauvoir wrote *The Second Sex*, she was like, "I don't want to be this. Right? Woman is everything I don't want to be." So
So she did define it, but for her it was a
it was this
negative.
massive negative that she ended up saying women need to be something else, an individual, right? 'Cause she was an existentialist philosopher, right? So this philosophy that there has been pretty much zero discussion my entire life about what it means to be a woman. What is a woman? And according to Grok, we end up with things like the biological, right? So there's a biological perspective. We didn't end up using my biopsychology textbook, right? If you guys, if you're interested in coming back to this question, we can read about things like, oh, I don't know. For mammals, sex is determined at the time of conception. Oh, okay. Are we mammals? When a sperm penetrates the egg and contributes either a Y chromosome or an X chromosome. From that point on, the path of sexual differentiation is set. From conception! Apparently, in 2002, according to biological psychology, sex was determined at conception.
Well, that's a terribly bigoted tome, and you should get rid of it immediately. Obviously,
Hey, I
sex
was
is a sign
assigned
of
this by a
birth.
woman who taught the class, so get a grip. I did. I sat in on this class in 2003 or so, biological psychology, and it was taught by one of our colleagues who studies the olfactory bulb. Her question her question of all in lectures was always in like but it was always the olfactory bulb that was the answer. She worked on scent. Okay. We will describe that path and its occasional exceptions shortly. Occasional exceptions. Mammals that receive an X chromosome from the father will become females. Those that receive a Y chromosome will become males. The mother always contributes an X chromosome. Males are said to be the heterogamic sex because they have two different sex chromosomes, XY. Females are homogametic, XX. Female birds are heterogametic. Well, that's interesting. The sex of some reptiles is determined by sex chromosomes. In other reptile species, the factor determining whether an individual develops as male or female is the temperature at which the egg is incubated. Oh, reptiles can go either way. No matter what the mechanisms, so mammals, the sex is determined at conception. No matter what the mechanisms, the developmentally early event that normally decides whether the individual will become a male or female is known as sexual determination. In vertebrates, the first visible consequences of sexual determination is in the gonads. Very early in development, each individual has a pair of indifferent gonads, glands that vaguely resemble both testes and ovaries. During the first month of gestation in humans, the indifferent gonads begin changing into either ovaries or testes. Conception in the first month. There's some pictures. There's also the very predictable, and I won't show you this, but there's a picture of a naked person who is an androgen insensitive person, captioned, although this person has the male XY chromosome pattern and therefore testes undescended, she also has complete androgen insensitivity. Therefore, her body has developed in a feminine fashion, courtesy of John Money. And Money is, of course, the one who did all the sex change operations. So there is this, I love this. Nobody would say this out loud, but androgen insensitive individuals, it says, show us that even morphological features can be confusing criteria by which to judge sex. Okay, so maybe you can't tell by looking. Could be an androgen
sometimes you
insensitive.
can't because of that. I recently revisited a very old Saturday Night Live. Julia Sweeney did a character called It's Pat, right? And the whole gag was that you didn't know if Pat was a man or a woman because physically she resembled both.
Right.
And the gag was that people were constantly asking her questions, trying to guess what she was.
We'll have to test Grok and come back to this. Yeah. Okay, so the androgen insensitive humans have a male chromosome and testes. Like most males, they do not have fallopian tubes or uterus, but they do have a vagina and breasts. And in many respects, they behave like most females. They dress like females, they are attracted to and marry males, and perhaps most importantly, even after they learn the details of their condition, they continue to call themselves women. I forbear to point out that Aristotle insisted that women were undeveloped men.
Was he a Freudian?
Well, no, maybe he just had better biology than people tend to credit him with, right? It's like if in fact, so yes, there are XY determinate conception, ovaries and testes develop in the first month, and yet there's some who can have those chromosomal markers, which I thought we believed in, genes and science, right? will behave socially like women or look like women. I'm not sure whether there are some pictures of women with the babies that have developed genitalia that look masculine.
Now, is that what they would consider called intersex?
So yeah, and we talked about them in the class.
Yeah.
So that it's
very rare.
rare. They're real individuals who have that. It's showing up in these 2002 textbooks as that possibility. So if people are taking biological psychology, they'll learn about it and say, okay, yes, there are people who in one category of biological definition will be male, and in another category of development will look female. Okay.
Right.
And behave like women. What does that mean? And there again, you have no answer because nobody will ever talk about it. Well, you do because we're like, okay, so
they're hormonally screwed up. It happens.
What? We are.
They're hormonally screwed up. It happens.
What, women or no, those people? No, but
those people, those individuals.
But the thing is that the question that nobody is, it's like I did not actually, did I watch What Is a Woman? I didn't watch Matt Walsh's movie, right? But the constantly, so the saying in modern society, this is according to Grok, the social and gender identity perspective. In modern society, the term woman also encompasses individuals who identify as women regardless of their biological sex. This includes trans women who were born with male biological characteristics but live and identify as women, which would fit with those androgen and sensitive individuals. But I think Blair White, maybe. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's a maybe, because I think quite a lot of them are just. I think they just got body dysmorphic disorder. So I think that's different than what you just described previously, because what you described previously was an actual physical problem, physiological problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
This broader definition reflects gender identity and is increasingly recognized in social and legal context, which is the interior perception at odds with the exterior form, which is going back to that evangelical problem of the exterior ritual versus the interior lived experience. We're in a theological gray space right now. Should I drop the line?
Yeah, it's the spirit. It's the spirit at war with the body, or so people think.
It's something. We still haven't defined what a woman is. There are these people that are wanting to live as women, socially identify as women. Do we know what a woman is?
Okay, so
we have no definition of what a woman is. They could be female.
Biological definition, but what you have is a difference between saying what is a woman and what is feminine.
It's like the social identity, gender and identity perspective in Grok's answer is all about trans women.
Yeah.
There's something about historical and cultural context of woman, a with man, woman person, with man meaning human and later male human post-Norman conquest. It's contentious. There's nothing in Grok's answer about what it means to be a woman.
Because people are confusing acting feminine, like Bruce Jenner does with Caitlyn, and like Blair White does with his many surgeries, and they're confusing the costume with the biological reality. I have to say, I don't think Blair White is. I think he's very well aware.
No, I think so.
that it's a costume. Yeah, he's well aware that it's a costume. But that's why nobody wants to say it, because and this is what I didn't understand when this whole trans woman movement started becoming, started gaining more traction about 15 years ago or so.
Yeah.
And they kept saying, I'm a trans woman. I'm proud to be a trans woman. I immediately thought, but if you were trying to pass as a woman, why would you announce to everybody that you weren't, that you're a man?
Right, because they're socially doing something different. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's different. It's something very different. So these are not cross-dressers, and these are not female impersonators. This is something different altogether. This is it's screaming for attention.
Something says Harry Styles in a dress, or the thing is, the thing is, most of the people that I know who are trans are not that flamboyant, right? So
Right, but
they're
the ones who are in the public, who are the face of the activist
right.
movement worldwide, mostly in the West, they most certainly were, and the
Yeah,
more outrageous, the better.
right. But most of us women aren't that flamboyant, outrageous, or are we?
Well, most of them, I could think of any number of celebrities that like to be flamboyantly
Kardashians or
female.
something like that. Is so to be
Kardashian,
flamboyantly
yeah.
female, most of us women don't. So does that mean okay? Has to be a to be continued. Um,
It's cliffhanger after cliffhanger after
it's
cliffhanger.
great. Hey, we did what we promised. We tried nation. We tried hot dogs, and we're going. Woman clearly is going to take more than one. Um, what here's the hint, right? Um, and she's talking. Douglas is talking at the end about this St. Paul's extraordinary demand that in the new Christian society there should be neither male nor female, which is a kind of social pressure. The cases we have considered may throw some light on the exaggerated importance attached to virginity in the early centuries of Christianity. So, ironically, women on the peel aren't virgins, right? But they're like sterile, like virgins, or not free, like
Yeah.
that. There's I think the sort of gender role of what kind of woman are you meant to be if you're going to perform this male role in society. The primitive church of the Acts. Remember, I was looking at everything always connects if you're a woman, right? And I was playing with Data Republicans' data set of the ante-Nicene Fathers. Guess what? We're still there, right? The primitive church of the Acts, in its treatment of women, was setting a standard of freedom and equality, which was against the traditional Jewish custom, or the traditional, well, anyway, we'll do Jewish and Christian later. The barrier of sex in the Middle East at the time was a barrier of oppression, as St. Paul's words imply. I'm not sure I agree with her there, but okay. Galatians 3:28.
Oh, I don't either.
Baptized into Christ, you have put on Christ. There can be neither Jew nor Greek, nor bond nor free. There could be neither male nor female, for you are all one man in Christ Jesus. That's the way she translated it. I don't know whether man it's always in. Anyway, neither male nor female. So there is a spiritual place in which there is no more male or female, which is challenging.
Well, I think, when I read that passage, it's equal dignity in the eyes of God.
Yes,
equal value.
I think that, but that doesn't leave a place to be either man or woman, neither male nor female. I will say I think we've been avoiding something. It's what I work on. It's the center of all of my scholarship, and I find that I bring it up online and people get mad at me. In its effort to create a new society which would be free, unbounded, and without coercion or contradiction, it was no doubt necessary to establish a new set of positive values. Douglas did grow up Catholic, so this is like, there's a positive element in this, but she's also pointing to like some interesting problems. The idea that virginity had a special positive value was bound to fall on good soil in a small persecuted minority group. For we have seen that these social conditions lend themselves to belief which symbolize the body as an imperfect container which will only be perfect if it can be made impermeable. Further, the idea, okay, so the problem of the ideal of virginity like vexes everybody in the background of like, if what we are best is not sexually active, what do we do with our sexuality? I think is there.
I don't understand.
Hold on. Let me finish. Here.
Okay.
Further, the idea of the high value of virginity would be well chosen for the project of changing the role of the sexes in marriage and in society at large, which Christianity does, right? The idea of woman as the old Eve, together with fears of sex pollution, belongs with a certain specific type of social organization. If this social order has to be changed, the second Eve, a virgin source of redemption crushing evil underfoot, is a potent new symbol to present. Again, the short version of it is we're gender confused because we lost the Virgin Mary, but don't you want to know why? and we've been this Simone de Beauvoir. Maybe we should start with her next week. We'll just do gender, right? We can do that, right? The way she rejects Mary, because she grew up Catholic, obviously she was French, right? The rejection of the problem that Christianity sets for who we are as human beings, and the real sort of meaning of what does it mean to be woman, as Jesus said to his mother, woman, right? There's the label, right? What is a woman? Well, somehow it's in the Gospels, right? Woman, who are you? I think the main thing that the gender studies has refused to talk about is the way we behave as women.
Isn't that strange? Because trans women are putting the costume on
There's
and they're being
way too
flamboyantly
much
female.
Eve still in us. If you think about it, it's like, what won't women talk about? The real thing,
What won't
our
we-
greatest taboo, what won't we talk about?
I don't know.
How we behave towards each other.
The worst kept secret?
Is the mean girls.
Yeah, we're mean to each other.
And I often wonder this about the trans women. It's like, you really want to belong to this socially? And by the way, we're nicer to you because
When are there men?
Yeah.
That's why.
we are not nice to each other. And that is like the real feminism movement, like, was all about that. It's like, think about how they shame, how, the women who, oh, you got to put on the suit. You go, girl, you go, girl. And then what we do behind each other's back.
Stabby, stabby.
Stabby, stabby.
Yeah.
So if you are willing, everybody left. They're terrified now. Cyril Nil-Mill. If nuclear resistance were invented by a woman, to be quack and quilt, not duck and cover. Okay, that's good. Guys are funny. That's very nice. Okay, Chad says, with that verse, it's also to remember that nothing on that list inherently gets at one a higher place in the heavenly hierarchy. Yes, and we can talk about hierarchy, and we can talk about. I think the interesting thing about talking about whether grok is masculine or feminine is it's like we all know what a feminine behavior is like, and we just don't want to address it. Like, why do we behave that way? Vox is, doing a social sexual hierarchy, and it's all the way the men behave and the gammas and how bad the gammas are. Ladies, we need to talk.
Again,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, and that our social hierarchy and the way we behave towards each other, it's so interesting to me. It's the literal biggest taboo in gender studies, is to talk about how women actually behave with each other as women.
And the dumbest one of the dumbest things I ever heard come out of the feminist movement over the past 40 years was this ridiculously provably false idea that if women ran the world, there would never be any more wars. And I mean,
Stabby.
immediately you can think of five. Yeah, you can think of 5 female world leaders under which there was horrible wars.
Well, and this is
yeah.
the passage that I thought we were going to end up concentrating on is the one that I read last week, where Douglas is pointing out that if you don't have she said, we have mentioned 2 very different instances in which male dominance is replied with ruthless simplicity. But the principle runs into trouble if there's any other principle which protects women from physical control. So if the women are protected from physical control, guess what happens? For this gives women scope to play off one man against another, and so to confound the principle of male dominance. The whole society is especially likely to be founded on a contradiction if the system is one in which men define their status in terms of rights over women. If there is free competition between the men, this gives scope for a discontented woman to turn to her husband's or her guardian's rivals, gain new protectors and new allegiance, and so to dissolve into nothing the structures of rights and duties which had formerly been built around her. That's what Nancy Mace did by going to the Citadel.
I'll have to revisit that one. I had a hard time understanding that passage.
Yeah.
What she actually meant, because I don't believe men have. Well, anyway.
Well, anyway, this is like, we leave it in like chaos right now.
Yeah. Well, even in chaos right now, but I just want to say that, the right woman with a man actually helps him.
Yes, and this gender studies won't talk about this either, right? It's like there's a good way of being in a relationship with the sexes, and there are completely destructive ways, and we have seemed to like blinded ourselves to both. We won't talk about the way good marriages function And we don't talk about the actual stresses that they're under. We just want women in
Yeah.
men's roles and DEI, and you can't say she can't join, and it's
Yeah.
we can't answer the question, what is a woman, because we won't ask it. And if I were a better like producer, we could like, and scene.
And
To be continued, as ladies do. We will be back next week with further
to talk about it some
to
more.
talk about it some more. So
As we do.
Sanjuro says, I'm here and Mary guides me. Yes, Our Lady is, I promise you, the only way out. She is the way to our Lord. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.